see. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Not For Nothing. I'm Joe Capobianco. I am back in Connecticut, and I'm really happy my next guest came all the way up from the swamps of Jersey to sit with me. This is the first podcast I'm doing since returning from being on the road. So why don't you let everybody know who you are?
My name is Magie Serpica. I now go by Magie McGowan. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York, and I lived in Staten Island for a bit, and now I'm in the swamps of New Jersey. But I still have ties to New York. I still work in Staten Island, and I own a shop in Maplewood, and I work at Bullseye Tattoo in Staten Island, New York.
Okay. So what made you leave Brooklyn? Like, how were you young when you left Brooklyn, or?
No, I was like almost 30, and I had been working in Staten Island for a while, and there's like the Verrazano Bridge, which got very expensive. The parking was crazy, but I was working in a shop in Staten Island, and it just kind of like got to a point where, like, if I'm going to stay working here, it makes sense to live close by, because the commute was annoying, and I had little kids, and that was what originally brought me like to living there after I had been working there for a bit. So, you know, and Brooklyn was kind of changing, so I wasn't too mad about leaving, and it was only like a bridge away. So
how long ago did you move from Brooklyn? Because I mean, I knew friends that lived there probably late 2008, 2010, and it was really starting to gentrify and change.
That's exactly when I left. 2009 was when I left, leaving Brooklyn to move to Staten Island. I had been tattooing in Brooklyn originally when I first started in 2001, and one of the guys at the shop, I mean, I don't want to say I did like a formal apprenticeship by any means. Like, I was kind of shown things. I guess that's how I like to say it. But and then the shop closed down like unexpectedly. And, you know, I was waiting tables. I was young. I was like 20.
You're doing all kinds of silly shit.
Yeah, just doing like, you know, a little hustling thing here and there. I was working I worked a summer in Coney Island, which was a nightmare.
Tattooing or?
Tattooing.
What was the shop? Like, why was it a nightmare?
It was not a shop. It was like a little kiosk of like, you know, shoot the clown in the mouth and blow up the balloon, but not that. Tattooing inside. No air conditioning.
So it was like straight up old school carnival style.
Straight up old school carnival style. Before Coney Island was like cool and becoming.
Whoa. When did Coney Island become cool? Because Coney Island, like way back in the day, it might have been cool, but I thought Coney Island was kind of a goof, man.
It's like seedy in a lot of ways, but it's become like built up. Like they're like, you know, they changed like all the amusement section. They got rid of that whole area that I was referring to where I tattooed. Like that was called the Bowery, and none of that's there in that like iteration of it at least. And they built up all these amusement parks and put all these like, there's like an Applebee's, there's like all these like, you know, corporate places around.
So it's become more box store kind of?
They're trying to, and now they're trying to propose a casino and like a whole crazy like new redevelopment. So I guess that's what I mean. Like before any of that was like a twinkle in anybody's eye.
So it was more
when it was like old world Coney Island, old school Coney Island, like that I had been going to since I was a little kid.
That's what I remember from Coney Island.
Yeah.
I had taken a friend who came in from California out there to check it out. And it was mainly because he's like, man, you got to take me to Coney Island. I'm like, all right, dude, it's October. I don't know what's
there's not much out. Yeah, you don't really want to. Yeah, it's not the same when it's not like tourism, you know, the height of tourism.
Yeah.
And people were, you know, it was a tattoo shop that, you know, like shop is so loosely defined in this term, but like there was no air conditioning. There was a fan that was just like an oscillating fan. And it was speed stick stencil days, so that shit was like melting off of people, and people were passing out left and right. And I'm like this 20-year-old doe-eyed, like I had no idea. I'm like, it was a crazy time. But you know what? I'm still really thankful for that experience, even though it was like.
I think I've often said things like that. Unless you've been shot or stabbed, I think that those are learning experiences.
For sure.
And I honestly believe that a lot of the cats that are coming into the business now would benefit from having those kinds of experiences. I agree fully.
And it's kind of like, it makes you really appreciate the luxuries that we have in tattooing nowadays. You know, like not having air, just even like the basic things of like airflow, you know, or just room, space to tattoo. Like it was a tiny little box. And I worked in another shop that was in Sunset Park that was very similar. And it was like, they were like just awful environments for tattooing, but we made it work. And because of that, anything better than that, it was like, I'm so appreciative, I'm so thankful, and like, I still remember those things. Like, it's not lost on me that's where, like, I was at one point in time.
And
in
I
life,
think that's something that's really important. Like, my first shop that I apprenticed in and came up, did 1 year at, was tiny. It was literally probably a third of the size of it. Well, maybe a little bit more than, maybe 2/3 the size of this room we're in now. It was tight, and we were on top of one another. There'd be 5 guys tattooing in this tiny little space at the same time. And, you know, at that time, we didn't really use tables. Everything was like, you know, it was either somebody's lower back, or it's very rare that you actually got to lay somebody down.
Yeah.
Usually you'd lay a chair back, maybe tops, you know. But when we went to the next shop, we had a little bit more space when they opened Lotus. And that was only a hair more space, but everybody had their own little spot. So it wasn't like anybody could bump into you or back into you or anything like that. And then eventually I went up to work with Corey Kruger, and everything at that point had changed. This is like early 2000. Yeah. And the shop dynamic in general was changing because it became more about creating an environment that made the clients feel more comfortable. You start seeing private rooms, which is something I never really dug on. And eventually, you know, 20 years later, here we are in my shop, and everybody's got a private room, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I get that. That's why when I got to the very first big shop I was ever at, it was Studio Enigma, Carlo Federo's shop. That was my
I fucking hated that man. I hated that man with a fucking passion.
You know what? I always say this with R.I.P. Carlo, but he knew it. He was the kind of guy. He said people either love me or hate me. A lot of people hated him, and you know, I started off young person working at his shops, and he was very rigid about the rules. It was 12 p.m. to 12 noon to 12 night. That was the shift, and if you couldn't do that, you couldn't work there. That was it. There was no flexibility. There was no appointments. We were not allowed to take appointments, and it was literally the customer is 100% always right was the mentality. Really? Oh yeah. I mean, to the point I would get into it with him, and you know, he was a intimidating dude to some people, you know. And but I didn't give a shit. I was some Brooklyn kid. I came to the shop, and I would get into it, and the artist would be like, you know, you're arguing with Carlo. I'm like, and
honestly, that's exactly how shit got done. Fuck that guy. He was the guy. We had just opened up Lotus. Cause was he with Tattoo Lou at this point?
Yes.
Yeah. That was was that his end? Because I never really bothered to learn much more about him, other than the fact that I fucking hated him.
I will say this to his credit, that he helped fund the financial lawyer side of getting tattooing legal in New York City with Wes from Unimax. And then there was the artist side. It was the artists that really advocated and pushed it, but they needed funds. Right. And Carlo's vested interest, I think, was he had these grand plans to open the Studio Enigmas. There was a whole bunch of them, modeled the Tattoo Loos, and his supply company, Technical. And what he had pioneered, which I'm seeing all the time everywhere I go now, these trucks that come with delivery supplies. He was doing that in 2000. Yeah. And so he had this financial interest on the supply side, that if tattooing became legal in New York, he can now sell to these New York shops in this innovative way with a truck that would drive around St. Mark's in Manhattan. So he did a lot in one sense, but I get why a lot of people
what you consider to be pioneering. Yeah. I look at as the beginning of the downfall of where things went with
I see that. I totally see that point, you know, and it's not I'm not wildly defending Carl, because I get what, you know, he was a character. He was just a character.
Oh no, most certainly. I agree wholeheartedly.
You know, but he you know, I eventually worked my way onto his very, very good side. So I didn't really get the wrath of Carlo. And you know, at one point in time, when I opened my first shop, which was maybe 2012, I had seen him at a convention randomly in Philly, and he was like, oh, you know, it's so cool that you're doing that. And he, you know, he did the right thing, I will say, for a guy in his position. He hooked me up. He hooked me up a lot of supplies. He gave me 6 months to pay him back, because he knew I was just trying to
just getting a start.
Just getting a start. I had 2 kids, just trying to figure out how to you know, make moves. And he hooked it up. So and then he eventually bought a bunch of the magazines. He took over Outlaw Biker, Tattoo Review, like that whole conglomerate that owned all those.
He was involved with all that stuff. I didn't know that, actually.
He did at one point, like a few years before he passed away, he bought those magazines, and then he called me up one day, and he was like, you worked for me for a really long time. You never stole a penny from me. You are always a hard worker. I want to give you like a full several page spread. You just got to get me the photos, and you can write the article, or have somebody write the article, and I'll publish it for you. Like, he looked out. I think like as he got older, he started like looking back I would imagine artists on a different level.
I would imagine there does come a point where you've burned so many fucking bridges that you have to kind of step back from who you are. And kind of either make good on it or just live till the end.
Yes. And, a lot of people, there was a lot of people, there was not really much of, I guess, a standard of working at those shops. That's how a lot of shops were back in the day. And so a lot of people would come and go, a lot of people passing through and just, and a lot of people didn't do right by just being a decent worker. Whether or not, you hate your boss. I was the kind of person that, this is my job. I'm choosing to be here. I'm not going to be a jerk, even if the people around me are jerks. I still have my integrity on that sense. There's some people who just don't, and they would steal and they would do whatever.
Well, that's when that was a time where if word got out about you, it spread. What I mean? But that was a time where there really wasn't a standard. And having said that, I need to tell my fucking part of the story. And it's not, I'm not really shitting on the dead, but fuck them. My issue with him came from the fact that when we had opened up Lotus, we'd been there about a year, maybe 2 years. And I remember answering the phone, and he's like, yeah, is this Joe? And I'm like, yeah, this is Joe. And he's like, this is Carlo from the world-famous Enigma Tattoo. And I had heard of the shop, but never thought anything of it. He's like, I want to offer you a job coming to work for me at the world-famous Enigma Tattoo. And I'm like, one second. Did you just call the place that I work at and offer me a fucking job during the fucking workday?
Oh my God.
He's like, yeah, I want to offer you a job working for me. I'm like, dude, do me a favor and go fuck yourself. And I hung up the phone. That was one of the only times I've ever had a conversation with him. After that, it was when him and Lou had opened up Technical Tattoo Supply, and I have mad beef with those fuckers, the Lou's, Tattoo Lou Sr. did my first tattoo.
Oh, really?
And I've known Lou Jr. my entire career. Yeah. I think he's a despicable human being. He can go fuck himself. I got nothing good to say about that guy.
You know what's so funny about that story? My very first day ever working at Studio Enigma was the day this one artist that still works in Staten Island, Mike Pastore, he was leaving. It was his last day.
I know. I used to work with Mike way back in the day. Yeah.
So Mike's last day was my first day at Enigma, and right outside, he did exactly that. He was like, "You want to come work at my shop?"
That's the thing that kind of... But again, you're right. There wasn't really... In my opinion, that was the beginning of the end. And it was a very short period of time, because the guy who brought me into the business had only owned a shop for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. He brought me in. Then he apprenticed another guy. Then he apprenticed another guy. And then he opened up a second shop. Then he opened up a third. And these shops were all up the road from another shop, an existing shop. And it literally got to a point where it was like, dude, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you can't run all these shops. Nobody that works for you likes you. They're only here because it's a job.
Yep.
And it got to a point where it's like, when I got an opportunity to fucking leave, it was never even a consideration that this guy apprenticed me. I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, you didn't have that loyalty like that, right? It was, I kind of had this, similar feeling where, the person that, showed me things ended up at Enigma, and that's how I ended up there. He called me. He was like, oh, yeah, that shop in Brooklyn closed, but we're in Staten Island. I want you to come out here. And that, that was what launched, me really into the world of tattooing in the way, where I took a lot from it. Because one thing that Carlo did do is he had a lot of guest artists come through. A lot of Italian guest artists, a lot of Brazilian guest artists, and some of them are phenomenal. Yeah,
and that was at a day and age where the only people that had guests coming in at that time was like East Side Inc.
Yeah.
You had New York Adorn didn't open for many years after that, but it was like East Side was one of the shops, or you had Jonathan Shaw's place where he had Philip come in. Maybe that was many years prior to that.
Yeah.
But it was still that was a big deal. But again, the 5 boroughs, what we were talking about before, trying to get people to come up to Connecticut. it's kind of like pulling teeth, because it's like it's not like upstate New York. You're leaving the state.
Yeah.
And you're going to like bougie Connecticut. So a lot of people aren't quick to come up here just to do the shits and giggles. You know?
Yeah, I get that, but there's still like something about like tattooing in this. I don't know. I just feel like there's, you got to do these things. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but like I also have this mentality nowadays of like, I've been tattooing since I was 20. I'm going to be 45, and I keep thinking like, how many more years of this do I legitimately have?
Don't even ask that question, because you shouldn't have to unless there's a physical ailment or whatever. It's something, for me personally, it's never an issue. Like, I want to do this till I can't, till I absolutely can't. I don't like the direction things are being steered in, where now there's a ticking time bomb on all of our careers.
Yeah.
Because of how dramatically things are changing with the younger generation of kids coming in and changing everything to a degree that either we don't want to keep up or we're just incapable of keeping up. It's more of not wanting to keep up.
Not wanting to, think. Yeah, I mean, and I know I get a little like existential about it, but like at one point, like, do you think that somebody would actually seek out somebody at a certain age? Do you feel like there's going to be a point where you're like, oh, I won't? So like a client would say, oh, I'm not going to that, but they're like really old.
Oh, fuck yeah. Fuck
right?
yeah. I think honestly, when people ask me why I feel my career has slowed down as dramatically as it has, it's mainly because I've been aged out. Like, I'm the oldest guy in the shop here, and it literally goes down by busyness on who's really the slowest in the shop, and it's usually the older cats, unless they've managed to score with. I mean, a lot of my clients, like you said, a lot of people say, well, I've tattooed all the kids and the grandkids. Yeah, and they're all done. Like, after 30-something years, they're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also not being in New York, which is, that's where a lot of my clients were coming from. All my older clients are still there. It's changed. And when you go to a convention, a lot of times it is people that are just like, oh, it's Joe Capobianco. I want to go up there and take a photo with him. Or I'm going to go up there and shake his hand and tell him how much he meant to me back 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I first got into this business, and blah, 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 which is great. That's not paying bills. And that is not the same as somebody sitting in your chair. The people I get for the most part at conventions now that are getting tattooed by me are older generation or younger generation who came in with an older generation, and they're like, you need to catch a tattoo from that guy because he knows a lot of shit, and at the very least it'll be entertaining.
That's happening to a lot of the old school Brooklyn guys like Mike Perfetto, and like he did my very first tattoo when I was 17, and now I see like on Instagram there's like these like pilgrimages that younger tattooers will take to go to his shop just to get tattooed and have the experience of being tattooed by like an old school Brooklyn tattooer. He still tattoos in the same way that, in his basement. Well, first come, first serve.
That's the most amazing thing. When I ran into him in Norfolk and him bringing up that nothing's changed. Yeah. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people get unless they're living this fantasy of wanting to be old school. And there's nothing wrong with living the fantasy, what I mean, as long as you don't forget. You don't try to usurp the real old school with like some dude who's been doing it for 15 to 18 years acting like he's the old soul and he's the one you need to be learning from. Yeah. It's like that's not the case. Yeah. So it is nice to see that that resurgence happening for those guys. Yeah. But it's hard to make a living in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like somebody like that, he does anything. Like I see him post and he'll share it. He'll share a word he did, he'll share, a neck tattoo. I mean, there's nothing that is like beneath him in any sense like that. And I think that's a really important part of being relevant in tattooing. Like once you go, like a friend of mine was just telling me that she was at a shop recently and a guy who was sitting there all day doing nothing, had nothing booked the rest of the day. Somebody came in and was like, yeah, I want this piece. And he was like, I don't do color. Like, you just let it walk out the door. Like, that's not the world I come from in tattooing, where it's like, you don't need to post it. But like, oh my God, you walk out the door. You don't do color. What?
I do more black and gray work now than I've done in my entire career.
It's so funny to hear.
I may photograph a third of it.
Yeah, it's what I mean.
The rest of it just goes out there into the world.
Yeah, you don't need to share it and create this like whole like style of it. I mean, but like to let just clients like. There's 8 million other tattoo shops. They're gonna go somewhere else, like right down the block, and get the piece done.
I think the issue we see with something like that is the fact that that person's probably not a shop owner, And again, like owning a shop is the best and worst thing you could possibly do. And the reason why I say that is because when you actually physically own the shop and you know bills have to be paid, you know the electric's got to be paid, the fucking water has to keep running, there's got to be a fully stocked paper towels. Like you need things that have to get done, not only for you, but for everybody who works for you.
Yeah.
And that's something that when it comes right down to it, you go, oh yeah, you don't get to not do the tattoo. If you don't feel comfortable doing that tattoo, totally understand there's 7 other guys here that one of them can do it. But the fact is you don't get to simply say, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's not like, oh, that's not, I can't do that. Like, you know, that's not I don't really know how to do that thing. But like, color, that's like tattooing 101.
Yeah.
You should learn how to do like a decent color piece.
Yeah.
Whether or not you want to pursue that as a style, but to like, it's just weird to me that there's like so many shops, so many tattooers, and then to sit there and say, I don't do this.
How long had this guy been tattooing that he did?
I'm not sure. I mean, he does like a lot of this like black and gray, like very like Instagram heavy stuff. And you know, so I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but my personal Instagram right at the moment is a lot of what, like I made a conscious decision after a very bad experience tattooing in Philly this year to like fine tune my portfolio to what people are seeking the most. That doesn't mean that I will not do other things. And I can literally make 3 other Instagrams of strictly other styles, you know, that I've done. I mean, I did mostly color for years and years. And now like, you don't see that because I hardly ever do it. But at the same time, I want to kind of like look a little more like cohesive with what I'm posting,
which is understandable, especially in today's day and age, because the fact of the matter is most people need it fucking spelled out for them.
Yeah.
In other words, like when we have people come in here, you know, the first thing they ask is like, oh, do you do this? Who does this? Mm-hmm. Who does the best lettering? Who does the best that? Mm-hmm. And we have a front woman, you know, our front girl, Tiff, the manager. Her big thing is like, well, look at everybody's book. Mm-hmm. And motherfuckers don't want to look at books. They just want to be told who to go to because that's your job. Your job is to find the person for me.
Yeah, it's weird.
And you sit there and it's like, dude, everybody in here is equally capable of doing whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
If it's a portrait, we might say, yeah, go to Phil, go to this guy, go to that. But the fact is, if Phil's booked out 6-8 months and you don't fucking want to wait, because you know as well as I do, 9 times out of 10, if someone comes into your shop and says, oh, I want the best portrait artist out there. Cool. Well, we'd recommend this guy over anybody. Cool. When can I get in? 9 months from now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, who else can do portrait work?
Yeah, exactly.
So does it really matter to you what you're getting done? So
exactly.
That's the worst part when dealing with clients. And like you're saying, you do want to gear things, especially in today's day and age, because that's what people expect to see when they go to an Instagram. What draws them to that is the one style in which they're attracted to, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
Because most people today, and this is going to sound shitty to our clients, are too fucking thick to realize that a good tattooer should be capable of doing any tattoo that you want. Some people are going to be better.
I agree with that fully.
Yeah, some people are going to be better at doing the fine line bullshit because they're probably willing to do stuff that a regular tattooer won't. Mm-hmm. The thing I've noticed now, and I don't know if you can agree with this, but the thing I'm hearing more and more now is the artists that are busiest having done the fine line black and gray shit. Mm-hmm. Not even fine line black and gray, just the trashy black little tiny tattoos that you see being done. The reason why they're able to get the ridiculous amounts of money for it is because they're okay with doing it. Mm-hmm. They don't care what it's going to look like. They don't care how it's going to age. You know, they're just okay with doing the tattoo. Where most of us are going to go, yeah, I don't want to do that. Can it be done? Probably. Mm-hmm. Doesn't always look the same in most people. Mm-hmm. I would go as far as say 8 out of 10 people are not going to be able to grow old with that tattoo.
Yeah, agree.
You know, and again, those are thrown off the top of my head, but I think that's the main reason they're as busy as they are is because they just won't say no because they know they can get the money that nobody else will ask for it.
That's true. And you know what's interesting too is that like I have my personal Instagram page, right? Then I have, because I tattoo in New York and in New Jersey. And then I have my shop page, which is my shop in New Jersey. For a long time it was just me, and now I have like another person that I just took on. But my website, it's like there's categories of like color, black and gray, cover-ups, you know, traditional. It doesn't say who did it, but it's all me.
Right, exactly.
It's all me because it's a shop. So people think like, oh, the shop can do different things. Right. It's not just like Maggie at this shop that does this one style. And when people come in and say, oh, like, do you do this? And I'll say, yeah, let me pull up some photos because, I mean, I have tons.
Right.
You know, I have printed books. That's thing of the past. Also, like, you know, like, so I have printed books where if you flip through it, you would never think it's the person that you see on my personal Instagram page. But, I mean, it exists, and I'm capable and beyond capable of doing a lot of, you know, different styles.
I think it's really smart. Right now, we've just retuned all of our... we haven't really gone at our social media because everybody has their own social media. The shop's got its social media, and it's pretty much a hodgepodge of what everybody else posts. And I have a couple of guys that don't have social media, so the shop has to take that in stride and deal with their clients. Our website we've just redone, but again, it's more of like just this collage of art, you know, from each artist. So there's no real exact thing. I haven't seen a website like that personally. In probably 15, 20 years, where things were broken down in black and gray, color realism, regular realism, traditional. I wasn't sure how to like go about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it the way I like have in my brain that I've done it years ago, and I did it. It kind of works. I've had people go, oh, I see that there's that section on the, like, people have referenced it, and it's an interesting little like social experiment of like paying attention to what people see, and I engage questions like that intentionally to kind of like feel out like what works, what doesn't work, because like, you know, there's a lot of shops now, and it's just millions of tattooers, and how do people decide where to go and who to go to, and, you know, unless they know you personally, unless it's like a direct referral, which I have a lot of those is my business. But when I moved to New Jersey, I was like a new person in a new town. I didn't know anybody, and I had to start from like nothing basically. And so I was like, I need to be like well-rounded and present that I can do lots of things. I think, especially back then, because you kind of had to put your best foot forward, because at that time, we weren't being inundated with social media, where if somebody got lucky and found themselves in the trend, then boom, they were the next big fucking thing and never looked back. You know what I mean? Like, that was at a time where if you were in a neighborhood with 6 other tattoo shops, you had to be the one that fronted forward and said, no, they suck. You can get anything from us. And you don't have to talk shit about the shop. But you have to make it clear to them that you're one step above the next shop up the street. Yeah, but what's so funny, too, is that, like, back in the day in Staten Island when I worked at Enigma, I mean, it was racks and racks and racks of flash, you know? We could not talk somebody out of the flash. It was like the be-all, end-all. Yeah. It was like... I'll be honest, I miss those days. I actually started, like, looking through, because the owner of Bullseye, Victor Morferi, he had the Tattoo Johnny Flash, you know, company for years and years. I remember those from like coming into this. I remember when Bullseye first popped up. The amount of shit that they were putting out. And like I had done tons of Victor's, like little black and gray butterflies, like these like little soft, like, because it was a style that really wasn't seen a lot in Flash specifically. In tattooing, yes, but not so much in Flash. So when people saw it, they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. You know? That was the first commercialization of taking traditional, like, there was always artists that created their own flash. I was one of those. Vinnie Myers, Dave Waugh, you know, you had Ken Cameron had his stuff, which was very in tune with like the J.D. Crowe stuff. But then you had like the Scott Silvio, all the West Coast 222 guys. Like, you had all these Mordentes, and you had the guys from Brazil and Europe. So those were these artists that were creating these individual bits of flash. But then you had him come down the pipe with Bullseye and say, oh no, we're going to do everything, but it's going to be kind of this like new schoolish, like artistic style that doesn't match any of the stuff that's on the walls now. It doesn't look like J.D. Crowe. It doesn't look like Ken Cameron. It didn't look like any of the... I mean, at that point, then you started seeing all the Cherry Creek shit, which was after me. Like, I never worked in a shop with Cherry Creek. Really? Never. Thank Christ. I fucking hated that shit. Although I will admit, you know, when my wife and I moved to New Hampshire, she had a shop in Tennessee, and she had all that Cherry Creek stuff. So one day I'm helping her, make copies so she can have, she could put stuff in the shop that she was working at, this shop called Jim's, which was covered in flash from like the fucking late 70s. It wasn't even like updated in any way, shape. No, but not in a good way. I mean, this place was a fucking pit. I swear, my wife would not use the toilet in this fucking joint. Like, she would literally, she'd have to be at work at like 10:30. She would not get home till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and she would make a beeline for the fucking bathroom because she wouldn't use the toilet at the shop. That's horrible. Oh, it was disgusting. The people that worked in that shop were troglodytes of human beings sometimes. Not everybody, obviously, but there was a couple that were fucking straight up looked like they crawled out from under a rock. But I remember going through that flash with her, the Cherry Creek flash with her, and being like, damn, this is like this is some solid shit. If everything was done maybe 20% bigger, I mean, this is stuff that people are getting tattooed.
I made a lot of money doing Cherry Creek. And there's some that like I still see on old clients so I have some clients I've been tattooing since like year 1 through 5, which is wild to say all that. And they have some of their Cherry Creek stuff, and now it like there was a little like resurgence among like younger tattooists to like find it. It was like retro vintage, you know, like trendy to get like Cherry Creek designs, just like
it was like doing going back and being asked to do a Taz or a Gossamer or
exactly,
like
yes, exactly, yeah. And I've done a bunch of those, like, you know, not like super baby tattooer times, like that was what people wanted and got.
Well, I mean, at that point, it was you did what you did what people picked off the wall, and you were happy for it because at that time, very few people drew. I mean, they didn't draw their own tattoos. That's what kind of set me apart early in my career was the fact that someone would come in and be like, I want a pinup girl. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not doing a Solo Jerry girl.
That's so funny.
You
that
know?
Carlo had some of your flash.
Everybody had my flash back. I know the worst part is, motherfucker didn't get it from me. So.
Yeah, we had your flash. We had, and you know, it's interesting too, because it's like, you know, I tell this to people, like, when they say, oh, have you ever done whatever? Like, I get that question a lot. And I'm like, yes, like, many times. Like, you name it, probably I've done it. Yeah. Because I came from a day where it was, like, pick off the wall. And one day there's a Paul Booth, like, skull thing. And the next day there's, like, a Cherry Creek butterfly. And then the next day it's a whatever. Yeah. And, I mean, it was just, you learn to do all the styles. And then it was a tribal. And then it was, like, all these different things. And kanji and lettering. I mean, that's just the way
tattooer
tattooing
back then
was.
wasn't a tattoo artist.
Yeah.
Back then they were tattooers, and they performed a job for a client walking through the door, and the idea that if you worked in a shop that had that much of an abundance of flash, that was a dozen different styles of flash.
Yeah.
That you got to, and then when you start collecting your own flash and you get to hang that on the walls, now you're bringing something to the table that nobody else in that neighborhood might have.
That's true.
And I miss that. I think it's a shame because I think being inundated with the amount of shit that people see nowadays on their phones particularly, it's a bummer because we're seeing the same, like they have millions of things to pick from, and all we see is the same pieces coming through the fucking wall, the same Godheads, the same Christ heads, the same doves, the same, you know, pocket watch and fucking rose and owl. But it's one of those situations where it's like out of everything you can have, it's like, and that's why I get mad about like talking about algorithms and stuff like that. It's like, it's not just that it's against me, it's also pushing our business in a direction that I don't necessarily think is healthy because it's cut down on people's thoughts and how they perceive themselves as individuals. Now they just want what the other guys got.
Well, also there's this new concept of flash tattoos where it's non-repeatable flash, which is like kind of to me and like a counterintuitive to what flash is. It's meant to be like a repeatable design, but now it's like there's like controversy. I see like these little like arguments and things on the internet about like, oh, is it a non-repeatable design?
So
or
that's the problem
specify?
with that, is the fact that when somebody looks at my work online and I post a picture, I don't post it as, oh, this is new. If I say flash, that means that's up for anybody who wants it over and over and over again. If I post a design, hey, here's some designs that I want to do. Those are one shots.
Those are one shots. But if you're calling it flash and you're making it like a flash sheet, like a, you know, whatever, Halloween theme, I mean, whatever the thing is, that to me is like flash design. Like that's just.
I think that's a younger generation of individual that wants to take part in a day and age that is no longer relevant to them. But this is their way of putting their toe in it and not understanding exactly. Like the same thing with like selling your flash. Like I remember years ago when everybody started putting these sketchbooks out, and everybody's like, "Oh, buy my sketchbook. It's a $50 sketchbook. It's $30 sketchbook. It's a $100 sketchbook." And basically, that sketchbook was just line drawings of everybody they tattooed.
Yes.
And then they get mad when somebody's walking through a convention floor and they see the fucking sketchbook on the table, and people are just picking designs out of it, and they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude? That's my work." I'm like, "Well, then you shouldn't have fucking sold
then
it,
what
dude.
are you selling it for? Just so people could look at
Exactly. I did my sketchbook when I published
my
my sketchbook back in 2000. I don't remember, 2003 maybe. I don't remember when it was. But in the front of the book, it says these are meant to inspire, not to be copied. This is work that has been done on other people. Half of it's not even finished. Like, this is not meant to be reproduced as Flash. Says it in the book. Not one fucking sketchbook that I've ever seen sold by somebody else, which was just line drawings from the back fucking room that they photocopied into a book, ever said that. So for them to get mad that somehow was a fucking... that someone was breaking a golden rule. I'm like, no, dude, you sold it. You put it out there.
Yeah.
It's fucking out there, dude. And it's a similar situation. If I do a sheet of Flash, people are like, well, you can do this to somebody else. I'm like, yeah, it's off a sheet of Flash, dude. That's what a sheet of Flash is. A sheet of Flash is there for anybody to get tattooed.
Yep. And
that's the beauty of that, because, yeah, you're going to... What's the difference between this sheet of Flash, which has literally only been seen by maybe a few hundred people, tops, and the fucking Pinterest tattoo that has literally probably not only been tattooed 1 million times, but has been seen 10 million times.
Oh, yeah.
Think about what you're saying.
Right, and then back in the day too, or like, you know, when they were bringing like the pictures of celebrities with their tattoos and like copying those things, like you know, Pamela Anderson armband, or like the one that we did. I don't know if this is like regionally specific to Staten Island, but it was the Nicole Richie rosary beads around the ankle with the cross going onto the foot.
I think that was one of those things. That was probably there's a good chance that was kind of the beginning of that. I mean, the Pam Anderson barbed wire thing was always going to be a thing once barbed wire came out. But I think that's always been an issue. Like, even when, like, you know, when Motley Crue or the guy from Poison got the fucking rose tattooed on his arm. Dude, we had people bringing in that fucking poster all the fucking time.
Yeah, you know? They bring it in. I want that. And then it was Rihanna with the finger, like, and
the
that
fucking
was like...
finger sleeve. That's a beautiful tattoo.
Yeah, and like that, you know, it's like I had to tell people, like, I literally tell people, like, you're not Rihanna. You don't have Rihanna lifestyle and money to fix those things and get them gone when they're inevitably shit.
Fucking love to see what that tattoo looks like now. I don't remember who the broad is. She's an actress / model. She's been in a bunch of fucking films, but she's like one of the first ones to get like the lion head tattoo on her fucking finger.
Those things are blob of shit.
Yeah, I remember seeing photo shoots of her, and they look like absolute dog shit. You know the motherfucker from New York ain't fucking fixing that.
No, absolutely.
Why would you? You know, and you know, and the funny thing is, the Honest Tattooer, they did a thing on Anil Gupta, and one of the cats on the show actually had an Anil Gupta, you know, and it was like probably 18 years old, and it still looked solid. It looked good, but it's not the piece of shit that's being done today.
Yeah.
You know?
Carlo had The Last Supper from Anil Gupta on his arm, and it was like, I mean, I would study that thing and just be like, wow, that's kind of crazy that you have that. Like, how did he do that? I was like more in awe of like, how did he do that? And, you know, he had like, he had a bunch of tattoos that were like, for me in the early 2000s, first time ever seeing them. You know, like a Shane O'Neill portrait. I mean, like all these different things. I was just like, wow.
That's when really individuals, cool. I think that's what put us on the map. It was the version of social media from back in the day, which was magazines and word of mouth and conventions.
Magazines, definitely, yeah.
And it was at a time where if you did something that was even slightly different from what everybody had been doing for the 20 years prior, then you were going to fucking stand out. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. I mean, even still, like, I you know, when people ask me, like, how did you begin tattooing? Like, I mean, well, first of all, I came from biker lifestyle. My dad was fully sleeved from 1982, basically. Nice. And so I grew up around it. I grew up around like old school Brooklyn dudes like Johnny Peters, Skullduggery, and all these different old school, like, he was the best man at my dad's wedding, you know? So like that was my upbringing, me and my sister being like little kids in a living room while like bikers are getting tattooed in a kitchen with no gloves.
Yeah, of course, that was the day and age.
With no gloves. And, you know, so it was always like it was never like, you know, unfamiliar. And it just felt like comfortable. Like my dad was a fully sleeved person when not a lot of people were, you know? Right. And he was very like diligent about like keeping it like here so he can wear like a shirt and you'd never know he had tattoos.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and that was part of it.
When
you know?
You tattooed like, I don't think I tattooed a hand. I mean, granted, once I started tattooing hands, it went crazy. But, But I don't think I tattooed a hand until I'd been tattooing maybe 6 years.
I think me too.
And anybody I tattooed, any hand tattoo that I did was either a biker, because there was a big biker contingent on Long Island, or it was a tattooer. And that's where you had a lot of younger tattooers just getting all shitted up on their hands and necks.
Yeah.
And that was probably, and then once I did that woman's head on the hand, it was like, I want that, I want that, I want that. And that became the thing.
Yeah, no, and that was like a big like, you know, aesthetic of like biker style things and doing things like very visibly eventually, you know, that became like down to the fingers and hands. and seeing all that. But in terms of style, like we were saying, and then, my dad was kind of always like, oh, you draw a lot. Why don't you get into tattooing? So he kind of gave me that push.
Nice.
But it was magazines, and I would like cut out our pictures, your stuff. Tim Kern was like God of tattooing to me. And then I went and got tattooed by him in 2001 because I was like, I need to have this. This is something like, and I think that's a lost thing too, of like people feeling like they need to seek out somebody that is like, people just walk into a shop these days. Like I feel like, old, whatever, but they walk in and it's like, you've never been tattooed here. You have no idea what we do. You just want anybody to say yes to teaching you. And that is shitty. That's super shitty.
But that's also the problem, and this is going to go to your conversation that you have with the other guys about conventions, because back in the day, you went to conventions because they were bringing people in from all over the world.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was all over the country, but eventually it was all over the world. And you're going to a convention to pick something from somebody that you're not going to be able to get tattooed except this weekend.
That's right.
At this show.
That's how it happened for me with Tim. He was in Chicago. I was in Brooklyn, and he was like, I'm going to be at the Long Island Hot Rod and Tattoo Convention.
That was a good show back in the day.
I loved that one. It was so awesome. At the Art Deco Vanderbilt, right? Yeah, it was.
You did the first one or the second one?
I think it was the second one.
The second one was the biker one with the fight. Yeah, that all got shut down, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was the first one, which was so cool with the little spinning rockabilly bar.
I worked with Eric Merrill, and who else was with us? I think John Soletra was with us. I have a photo of it back here, actually.
Oh, you gotta show me.
Chris Longo was there. And I remember we were staying at the little motel right next door.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a ghetto fucking motel. Like some of the rooms had whirlpools in them.
Oh
and
my
stuff.
God,
like
that's
it was
amazing.
It was a sketchy fucking hotel.
Yeah.
But that show, I remember,
that show was awesome.
It was one of the first shows like that where it brought a lot of different cultures. It was an HA run show, but it brought in beatniks from all over the fucking country. They brought their fucking cars, this car culture, and the venue itself was fucking cool as shit.
So cool. Is that even still there?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was a really sick venue.
Yeah.
It just had it lended so much to the vibe of the convention, and for rockabilly style tattooing, like the car culture.
And there was a lot of people from Long Island there. It wasn't like it was exclusive. That wasn't like one of these international shows. Like I came down from New Hampshire to do that show, and I remember just being blown away because it was such a different feel for a show.
It was,
because up until then, the craziest it got, I want to say, would have been Tattoo Tour. You know what I mean? Because Tattoo Tour was always held in a really cool, not the Vanderbilt, excuse me, I forgot the name of the hotel in Miami, but gorgeous fucking hotel. And that brought in artists from everywhere. Like Bugs was there. It's the first time I met Bugs. One of the first times I met Bernie Luther. All these amazing fucking artists were at that thing, and it was just fucking incredible.
Yeah, I think a cool venue will bring in and attract really, and it was a cool concept. It was not done a lot, and I think that's why Tim came from Chicago.
Yeah.
And it was basically Friday night was my night to get tattooed. There was no you're not finishing this tonight, or we'll do it another. It was that was it. 7 hours tattooing straight on my back.
Yeah.
It sucked, and that was my night. And then I went there the next day and just hung out and watched him tattoo the next person. I had been tattooing sort of for a couple of months, so I was very beginner.
Yeah.
I wish I could relive that experience, because anything he might have told me,
one in, one out.
I had no idea what he was even saying.
That's understandable too, because you do get to a point where you're overwhelmed. That's one of the things that people complain about with conventions nowadays, is because they don't know what to expect. They know they should be looking for somebody, but they may not run into that person because they're either not going to be patient enough, or they just simply don't know that's going to exist for them. And that's kind of a bitch, because that whole that excitement and that beginning feeling. The one thing somebody asked me what I missed about the 90s. I miss the uniqueness of it. I miss the excitement of something happening for the first fucking time. Now, if something's cool and something's exciting, we get bashed over the fucking head with it by the algorithm or whatever for a fucking week solid, true. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm fucking over this shit.
Yeah, it's so true. That's so true. I remember when you say that excitement, I remember that. I can actually put myself back into that mindset of the New York convention, the one at Roseland.
The first ones, yeah.
Yeah, the first ones. And I would walk around by myself, and Tim ended up doing that one too, and I was just such a big Tim fan. And I would just watch him tattoo. I would just sit there like, can I watch? And like, I would, like, it's humbling to say, can I watch you? Some people were like, fuck off, and they wouldn't even give me the time of day. But I would ask it to all the artists, like, can I watch you for a few minutes? I met this one dude, and I wish I could remember who it was. French artist, and I was asking him like, hey, can I watch you? And he didn't speak English enough to like communicate with me.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, come back. And then he like, I was trying to ask him a question about his machine that he was running, and we couldn't, like, there was language barrier. Yeah. So he set up his machine and started like, and he put my hand, he's like, making me feel like just the way the machine was running.
That's impressive.
So cool. And then I had a lot of those experiences, but I was just so eager to like see these people doing fascinating things and like soak it all in. And I feel like that's so lost on like people coming into tattooing in the last several years. Like,
well, I think what we're finding now is simply the fact that those people, those kids, those look star in their fucking eye, like, they're not the Huck Finns. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're not the kinds of people that are going to just take the world by the balls and run with it.
Yeah.
You know, they just want everything in its nice little bubble, in their little safe space. And again, I'm not taking shots, and I'm sure that's not going to go over well. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, I don't think that they want that. Anything they can learn is on their fucking phone. They don't need to go learn from somebody else. They don't need to get tattooed by anybody else. Look at how many of these amazing tattooers of today, and credit to them, they're not even tattooed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How many tattooers are literally like, you can't even see if they do have tattoos.
That's a thing. I know. It's a crazy thing for me to think about, you know?
Yeah.
It's a hard concept to wrap my brain around.
You know, the funny thing with that, too, was I remember back in the day when you look at like Stanley and Walter Moskowitz, they didn't have a lot of tattoos. They had a couple of tattoos on them. Mm-hmm. So I'm not against somebody who's not tattooed. But what it does freak me out is the fact that with all the excitement that's going on with styles, supplies, needles, everything.
Accessibility.
So much to be gleaned by just getting tattooed. Mm-hmm. And they're not even interested. They're just kind of like, no, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. Like, I already got my plan. This is already laid out. Like, and I got a clientele, so fuck it, I don't really care. You're wrong. And they're not wrong. I mean, they're not wrong for saying that.
Yeah.
Like, because my way of thinking is completely fucking outdated, and apparently it's working for them.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing better than I am, so good on them, you know?
Yeah, but, like, I feel like that, you know, I keep having this thought in my head that, like, you know, people said this after the pandemic, like, oh, it'll weed out the people that are not really serious. Like, I don't think it did that to the extent that some people hoped it would, at least. And yet, you know, and again, like, is this sustainable in the direction that, like, tattooing is going in? Is it sustainable for everybody to always be busy like this, you know?
It's my thought, because people have said the same thing, and I've been hearing since 1993 that the bubble is going to burst. That this is all going to change. Yeah. All the fucking chafe is going to go to the side of the road, and it's just going to be the best of the best that are going to be out there doing their fuck. Yeah. It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
I think you're going to lose. We're going to lose a handful of these young cats that have only been in the game since COVID, because, you know, maybe they came in, maybe they had a really good job before. Now they realize that it's not the money they were making before, whatever. But I think the biggest issue we're going to run into is a lot of these motherfuckers simply don't know better. Like, when I talk about conventions from back in the day, when I talk about supplies from back in the day, when I talk about everything from back in the day, it may sound like your grandmother or your grandfather, you know, reminiscing the days have gone by. You know why? Because they're fucking right. It was better back then.
It was better,
The fact that you don't know the difference between today and then is that's a failing on your part. That is a shortcoming on your part. Like, it's the same reason when I talk about coil machines. If you've never used a coil and you act like the pen that you're using from China or the one you got from one of the major brands, whatever, and you think that's the best there is that this business has to offer, you're crazy. Fucking wrong, because you don't have a point of reference. That's not a shot. True. That's just the God's honest truth.
Well, that was the Philly convention. There was a how to tattoo a coil seminar, which was like...
Oh, that's from Annette. I think, right?
From Annette, yes. Which I'm like, good on her for teaching that. You know, great person to learn from. But like, what? Like, what? You don't know? Like, how?
But how crazy is it? That's the world we fucking live in. Because there are people that are considered, like, they're what's the word I'm looking for? You know, they feel threatened by a coil. They feel threatened by the noise. They feel threatened by, oh, I got to buy more than one needle. It's more than one tube, and I got to set up 4 machines versus just having one machine. Don't get me wrong. having a pen is a tremendous tool. It's
yes,
a phenomenal
agreed.
tool.
Yeah,
it's not better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's not better, and that's the point. If you think I'm wrong, try it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Try it and go out and learn for yourself, because that's the only way. Like when I first started using rotaries, Lal Hardy's the first one to turn me on to it, and it was with the Stigma Hypers, which at that time was like the best of the best. And then more and more machines coming out, and I was buying fucking everything. And machines back then, that's when machines started getting really expensive. You know, I think the most I ever paid for a coil back then, and this would have been in like 2008 maybe, I don't remember, and or 9. And I remember the most I paid for a coil back then was a collaborative between Seth Safari and Aaron Kane. It was a $500 machine.
And that was like really expensive.
At that time. Because at that time, most machines were going anywhere from like $180 to like $250 for like the top end shit by big name artists. You know? But I started picking up all these hypers, and now I got friends giving me machines and like, oh dude, check this out. So I'm using everything, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, dude, you're never gonna know what the best one is until you use them all.
Just try them out, right?"
Yeah, and I have them all, or I was able to resell them. So it's not like I was wasting money. To me, it's R&D.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, so. It's like, how do you know what you like until you know what you don't like? You know, and it's trying. Like, why not try it out?
Right.
Like, that's part of what being an artist is, I think, is experimenting, seeing what works for you. Don't being like so stuck in a way that like everything else is just like you can't even let a little bit in. But I mean, we were just having this conversation at Bullseye. We did like a little like video of us like showing off all our machines and like talking about them.
I just watched that on your Instagram.
Yeah, and it was really cool, like talking to other artists that like get it. They come from that world of different types of machines. We're open to all different things. And I recently just bought this like rotary machine from a machine maker in UK, Uncle Roy. Awesome. I mean, awesome. And it like, I had to get a little bit used to the feeling of it again after using pen machines for a while. But like, I mean, using it doesn't, nothing I've ever done with a pen has given me that same effect in this like black and gray.
It's Uncle Roy.
Uncle Roy.
And what's the machine? Is it like a needle on the bar? Is it like a cartridge?
Well, you can use that little like a metal tube adapter for the cartridges if you want, but it's there's a wire, there's a power supply, which a lot of people are they don't own those.
I still don't like batteries. I mean, I have a couple machines that only use batteries that I just got. And I just don't like the weight. I like that little drag that hangs off the back of the machine. And I know it's just me, not wanting to change that. But I also don't dig on pens for lining with. I still prefer needles on the bar to line with, and I either use a coil or I use one of my transverse machines from Brazil. So.
I get that. I started doing a lot more like traditional again. Not like for the first time, but again, like back into it. I spoke about this before where I created a little like pseudonym name because like I said, I fine-tuned my portfolio to be all this like black and gray flowers a lot, and I love doing that. But then I got like a little bit of FOMO of like, oh, well, now I don't get to do the other stuff that I like to do. And now, and part of the Philly experience was like everybody had a cool tattoo name. Like it was just like I don't know if it's like that's their Instagram name that becomes the name on the banner or what, but like here I am with like my normal name and I'm like, fuck now, so I created this little like side Instagram profile that looks nothing like the stuff on my other page, and it's all American traditional, which I love to do. Is
it actually helping? Do you see a change in what's going on?
People don't know it's me because I made myself a cool tattoo name. And so it's kind of fun. It's like this little like secret side version of me that is interesting little experiment.
Well, how quickly did the because I mean the fact of the matter is that only works if the Instagram actually gets traction, starts attracting people to like it.
True.
Followers, and then those followers in turn have to find you.
That's true.
Wherever you are. I mean, how quickly is that happening?
I will say
really slow?
It's a little slower, but what I started using like weird apps that I never used before, like Threads. Like I've never used that app, and I use that app, and I put it out there, and I got people from Threads coming for American Traditional to my shop in Jersey.
That's killer. I mean, so you're the first person that I know that's actually said that, the fact that they've tried something dramatically different and it's actually paid off in one way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? It's
starting, it's fairly new. The convention was in January. I think I started this like in the end of February. So it's still like new
Still
and building some traction, but like I'll share it to my shop page as like, this is another tattooer at the shop. Not that, oh, here's me doing my other thing. It's like, come to Ghostwood Tattooer and get American Traditional. People bite at it and go, oh, cool, I want to get, or I'll share like I'll make flash pieces and people are like, I want that, or claiming the piece, because that's how it is now. But and it seems to have worked, and I'm happy at least that even if it doesn't become like a main thing I'm doing, it's a thing that I'm also able to do.
And you're trying. I mean, the fact is, you're willing to try something. I mean, over the past, one of the things everybody says is like, you just don't want to change, you don't want this, you don't want to do that. And I'm like, dude, that's not the case. I mean, I've done a lot of different things that I swore I would have never done. To try to keep up with what's going on, to try to be a bit more innovative. Like, I mean, people like Jimmy Litwalk and I, Eric Merrill from here, like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, dude, we were changing a lot of shit. We were putting out books, we were producing tons of flash. Not that was never a thing back in the day, it was, of course. And we were following in the footsteps of bigger and better people from that perspective. But we've always tried to be on the front end of things. The problem being is, it's like now there's so much out there. It's so difficult to really kind of get a toehold. And then once you do, there is that situation where once they get a look at who it is that's doing it, they go, there's another guy over here doing something very similar. He's half his age. I'm going to go to him. So that is a legit thing. I mean, it is hard to find somebody to think outside the box when it comes to what they expect their tattooer to be like.
It's a tough thing. Like I was recently asked by a friend of mine who teaches at a college to come and do like a talk to college kids that want to pursue a career in art, because I eventually at one point in time I went to art school. I went to FIT for like just illustration, and not because I really wanted it as a career, but I was desperate to get better at art. I really wanted to get better at painting and drawing, and it was a lot of life drawing, and I love that I had that, and I always say this to people, like, obviously art school is not mandatory to be a tattooer, but I noticed a direct correlation that as I got better at drawing, and that doesn't necessarily need to be art school specific, but anything that engages challenges you and teaches you to be a better artist, for me, it was school. As I got better at drawing and painting, I saw massive leaps and bounds in my tattooing, but then the reverse. As I got better at tattooing, it lended itself to my art style and my painting ability, and they've constantly played off each other. And now, like many years later, like I still do a painting that I think of things of like, oh, how would I tattoo this, and to solve the problem. They both bounce off of each other still to this day and age. But a friend of mine had asked me to like talk about this stuff to students, and a pandemic hit, and my shop in New York was closed for almost 5 months. That sucked. But I started doing logos for people. I started doing murals for people, because I've always done this like hustler little like side thing, all these little projects of, oh yeah, I'll collaborate on a mural, I'll do this and that. And then when shit actually hit the fan,
you had a backup.
I had a backup, and I had a way to like hustle and keep myself as an artist making money, not like needing a job at like Target. No hate if that's somebody's reality, but like that cannot be me. Like I'm not cut out for that. That's not in my genetic
Your
makeup
wheelhouse.
to be able to work at a place like that. So I'm not a rule follower in that way. I can't. So I needed to like figure out the hustle, and that I think applies in the world of tattooing.
Most certainly.
That hustle mentality, like, yeah, okay, it might not be your dream tattoo, but that little stupid thing that you think and you're like hating on could bring you the sleeve in 6 months from now.
Right.
Or that person's whatever, uncle or whoever, they tell them they had a great experience with you, and now you have a big ass back piece to do.
Right.
That's how that hustle mentality of like, nothing's beneath me, don't have to post it, but you still should like pursue doing it.
Most certainly. I mean, I had a conversation just recently with one of the guys here today, and they were talking about how he's in the process. Like, someone will come in for a tattoo this big, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I want to turn it into a sleeve. And I'm like, well, dude, not for nothing. And they may ask him that after the fact, after that first tattoo is done. And I'm like, dude, every tattoo should go in thinking like, hey man, like, I know this is the middle of your form. What you're looking to get done is a cool idea, but are you planning on getting more tattoos? Because if you are, then you may want to consider the fact that, hey, how can we build off of this? And that was something back in the day that I always did, where everybody who came in looking to get a tattoo, you'd always say, well, how much more work are you going to get done? You know what I mean? Do you eventually want to get your chest tattooed? Do you want to get your arm finished up? I will admit, after 30 some odd years of doing that, it's harder to think that way now, because a lot of times when people come in, they're just looking to get their fucking tattoo and bounce. And it is, you really, and I understand this is a fault on me personally, but it is one of those things you really have to put your feelings aside, and the fact that you're just here to get that fucking money for that one tattoo, and go, no, it is still your job to fucking not to train this individual, but let him know that this is a giant world that he can enter. Or he could just get his one little dummy tattoo and walk away and never get tattooed again. Yeah. But I'm sure, I mean, one of the biggest complaints I think I took for the Honest Tattooer of all places was the fucking me complaining about people coming in for like little bangers and eventually coming in like 6 months or a year and a half later wanting to get a sleeve out of it. And I think people misunderstood, because people immediately came back with, well, dude, that's how it used to be done back in the day. People just used to get little patches and get them fucking... That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a fucking stick figure here, a fucking some lettering here, a fucking, a music note here. And that's what we're talking about. I'm not talking about cool old school flash that can eventually come together.
And turn into something,
Exactly. I'm talking about those people, and I think that's the problem we run into. Because, I mean, dude, you look at these fucking musicians and movie stars and shit, and they're covered in dumb shit tattoos all over the fucking place. That's fine. I'm not knocking it, but it is one of those situations where it's like, when you want to do something more, that's going to hinder what your future brings what your future can be in tattooing.
Yeah, I see that with like a lot of young guys specifically. They want like right smack in the middle here, and I'm like, let's move that up. Yeah, let's do that somewhere. Do it on the inside. Do it somewhere else, because that's real estate. If you ever decide, because you're like 19 and you don't know what your life's going to be in 10 years when you want to like build that out. Like I feel that like people who've been tattooing, like I'd say 15, 20 years plus, I always like frame it to clients of like, we have the benefit. It's a benefit. It's a privilege to be able to see things age, number one, and where clients land in their life decades later.
Yep.
And that's like something that, I mean, obviously just comes with experience for every single person. It comes with time, because you can't teach that really. But I feel like that's such a privilege to be able to like present that to the clients nowadays. Like I try to flip it and say like, look, I've been doing this a really long time. I've seen this come and go. I've seen people regret not the tattoo, but the placement. Or the size. Like they're like, oh, I want this little thing because it's a first tattoo, but like hindering the fact that like
they
now
want
you
to
have
get more
all
work.
This, and you want.
It's funny. We had a cat just in here. Maybe it was the last Flash Day event we did. I can't remember what the fuck it was. But it was only a couple of months ago. But he comes in and he went and got tattooed at some night fair, and he got a little fucking tiny, cowboy hat skull. Like, no exaggeration, like maybe a bit bigger than a quarter. Tiny. Just lines. It was fucking backward, which drives me fucking crazy. Which basically leads me to believe that they didn't have any way to reverse it. So they were just knocking out bullshit tattoos.
You're probably right.
Paid way too much for it. Comes in, he wants to get like 2 tattoos off of our flash. And I talked him into doing the tattoos a hair bigger. And instead of dropping one here and one here, I'm like, hey man, why don't we do this? Why don't we put one here, and then keep that one in the middle, and then I'll just put a little bit of stars and dots around the 3, and now you've got one big tattoo. And he goes, well, that's a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, that's something your fucking tattooer who put the tattoo in the middle of nowhere
did not consider.
What I mean? It's like literally taking a map and just being like, okay, I'm going to put it here. You know what I mean? So it was one of those situations where, yeah, man, that's the idea that's what I don't want your fucking, your $120 that badly. Yeah. That I want you to come back. And to that guy's credit, he's in the process of getting a whole, well, he got it done. I finished it. But he got his whole lower half sleeve done.
It's awesome. And now it's like a trust building thing too, because you're the person who informed him where somebody else didn't and just took the thing. Yep. And that's a big part of it. It's like, building trust with people in general. But I always make a little joke too. I do a lot of like little things in the neighborhood I'm in Jersey, like little stars. Yeah. I'm always like, start of a sleeve, and like they laugh. I'm like, you laugh, but start of a sleeve.
It's the beginning. It only takes that first one.
It only takes that one.
The longest time I never had this forearm done. I figured I was just going to get half sleeves my first year tattooing. I'm like, who knows how long this could last. This is 93. I didn't know I could do this for the rest of my life, And it wasn't until I got the mantra on my wrist that I went, okay, it's done. Now I'm going to get the rest of my arm
That's
done.
it. Yeah, now you're committed.
And that's exactly it. I think that's something that, clients, and that's why whenever I go on a podcast or whenever I do this podcast, it's something, it comes off as being really crass to some clients. But I was brought up in an Italian household. If you didn't fucking get it when it was told to you, you got smacked in the fucking mouth until you got it. And this is my version of a smack in the mouth. It's like, you're going to pick this up because this is the way you kind of should be doing it.
It's kind of how you should. Well, I have that issue a lot with a lot of people in this particular town. I'm in Jersey. They're wonderful clients, but what's a huge trend is the it's for me, the upside down. And I try so hard. I mean, I literally pose it in every way. Like when you wear a t-shirt and there's a graphic, is it for you to hold up and look? No, it's so that there's no convincing them. There's nothing, like I've posted this in to some groups of tattoo groups where I have some friends there, and I'm like, what do I do? They won't listen. Like I'm doing everything, literally telling them if you have another tattoo here, which one's going to be upside down to itself? There's no convincing.
The only way I've noticed the couple of times I've been able to do it, I've never gotten a cross that was going to be an upside down cross. I've heard people say that, and that's enough of a wake up call. Excuse me.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been lettering. Like someone wanted an M tattooed on their wrist, and they're like, "Oh, can we do it the other way? It's for me." And I'm like, "Okay, we could do it the other way." And I put it on her. I go, "All right, stand up and look at it in the mirror."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, it looks like a W." Do you know why? Because an upside down M is a fucking W. And she literally was like, "Oh my God, I would have never thought about that." I'm like, "Yeah, up until you people came on the scene.
Yeah.
This is the way it was always done. Cars run on wheels. Mm-hmm. Lettering goes up and down. Tattoos are made for other people to view."
Yeah, I literally had this conversation this morning. Early in the morning, I had a 10 o'clock consultation with somebody, and it was for to do a tennis racket with some flowers, like a custom memorial piece, right? Very meaningful thing. And she was asking me for placement, and literally I was like, if we do this on the forearm, it's a great spot because it lends itself to the shape where it's the widest part of the tennis racket on top, and then it tapers down on the wrist. And I was assuming I had to interrupt myself.
Assuming you don't want to do it ass backwards and upside down.
I had to interrupt myself and be unless you wanted to do it where you can see it, which, that's a thing, but I'm going to tell you my opinion is that's upside down, and it's not the way you should do it.
Well, but the thing is, the funny thing with that is, though, with something like a tennis racket and some flowers, you could do it where it can be seen both ways.
That's true, but for the design shape, I was it should go.
It makes more sense.
I have it in my head, it needs to be this way, and if she doesn't want to do it that way, it's a whole different design in my mind. But I find this conversation constantly with people, lately, and it's not in New York. It's so weird how state by state, in New York, don't really have these conversations. New Jersey, every other day.
I think it's the class of client you're tattooing.
That's
a lot
true.
of it's if you're doing soccer moms, they need to be fully educated. Mm-hmm. When you've got someone in New York who actually maybe not from New York, but they took the time to come into New York, mm-hmm. that's already a better class of person because they've got balls mm-hmm. and they came into New York to get tattooed, knowing full well they're going to pay too much, no offense.
Yeah.
But they're going to pay too fucking much money, and they have to risk traffic and bullshit and whatever else in their daily life.
Yeah.
Growing up on Long Island, that's why I say that, because on Long Island, you stayed on Long Island. You know what I mean? I didn't go in Manhattan to get fucking tattooed. I stayed on Long Island. Not to say that there wasn't... When somebody came from out of state, out of the country, I got tattooed by Bernie Luther there. I went and got tattooed by Anil Gupta there. I got my forearm started from Mike Ledger there. Mm-hmm. That's those are the people I was willing to go into New York for.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they were great tattooers on Long Island. I can get tattooed by them there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there is that. So I think... when you've got a more adventurous client, then they're already going to listen to what you have to say because they took the time to come to you. If it's just somebody who literally is in the same fucking town as you, you're doing what they ask them, and you're going to have to fight that much harder to educate them on what you think it should look like.
Yeah, it's weird too because I think in a lot of ways though, Staten Island is specifically. I do have a lot of clients that come from out of borough a lot, but a lot of Staten Island is probably similar to Long Island in that they don't leave the island.
Yeah.
They're just there.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients I've had, now it's the children of my older clients. A lot of my clientele is that. And like I've known them since they were like this little kids, and now they're like grown ass adults with like families, and I'm tattooing them.
But the fact of the matter is the mentality doesn't change. I mean, that's something growing up on Long Island that I see. You know what I mean? Like, it took me leaving the island to never want to go back. And I know that sounds shitty because I do love Long Island. I mean, there's a lot of things about Long Island that I absolutely fucking adore. There's a lot I fucking don't mind. I don't miss at all.
I feel the same way about Staten Island. Both of those things you just said are very true.
But it's one of those things, if you've never left, then again, you don't know any better. So therefore, how could you be right?
How could you know?
They know what they got, you know? So there is a lot of that. And again, that's where I think that it is our job to educate. It is our job to make sure that some of our clients see a couple of the reels of things that we're putting out there, that they get this. You know, there was a thing with this cat, John, down in Florida. He does all those, like, those little videos and reels and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
TikToks
I've seen this stuff. Yeah.
And a lot of people get pissed when they see some of the things that, because he's making fun of clients, but I think he's doing it in a way that it's like, hey, he's making fun of them, but it's educational. You know what I mean? He's not going up there and saying, hey, fucking stupid, what is wrong with you? Why don't you do it this way? This is how it's supposed to be done. He does it in a funny kind of way.
Yeah.
For us, it's fucking hilarious.
It's hilarious.
I guess I could see clients being a little upset. But if you're upset, then you're taking yourself entirely too seriously.
Oh, I didn't know that a lot of people were getting upset at
this.
Oh
yeah, like I've seen a couple of people like make shitty comments on in the comment sections and stuff, and it's like, dude, it's a fucking joke. But it's the best part is the fact that he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Like, I've never seen where I'm like, wow, that's a stretch. Never. I'm like, yeah, that's spot on.
Well, the worst is when you see the shitty comments coming from other tattooers. Ugh. Because that's another thing we see. It's like, oh, you should be bending over backwards for that fucking client. Because if you don't, I will. Like, I'll take it in the ass for this fucking client. What are you willing to do? And it's just like, no, dude, I'm willing to give this guy my all. But he's got to do things in a certain manner in which it makes sense to both of us. I can just do whatever the fuck the person wants.
Exactly, like it makes sense to both of you.
But if I can talk him out, now having said that, over the last couple of years, one of my guys here, Eric, has said it. It's like, dude, he's like, you tattoo. Like, if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So what would you rather do? It leave the shop? You know full well you're going to do a better job on it than anybody else in this area. So why aren't you the one doing it?
Right.
So that is a bit of a rude awakening, in all honesty.
It's a really hard position when those things happen. Did you hear about like that tattooer? I don't know what state it was, but like I think it was a guy. He tattooed like a very young person, like a 12-year, like a 10-year-old, like a kid.
It just popped up on social media, right?
Fairly recently,
yeah.
And it wasn't illegal. I think it was like maybe Kentucky, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, there was no real age limitation.
No age limitation. And his mentality was, if I don't do it and I know I will do a safe, clean, good job, it's going to be a shitty shop and this child is literally going to be at risk. And it was like, where do we draw the line at that mentality?
It is one of those situations. I guess it depends on where you are. If you're... And again, I'm not going to say this is some backward, fucked up town in Kentucky, but one can only guess and assume. But I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, if you're the fucking voice of reason and nobody's listening to you because you're the only sane person in an insane asylum, then you have to be the one to be like, all right, fuck it, sit down, I'll do the tattoo. But I mean, I don't think I will. I mean, I've never tattooed somebody's face. It's just... Yeah. I don't dig on it. Eric has done several. You do it. I'm good.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
need
not
to do
for
it.
you, right? Yeah, like I won't even tattoo like 16-year-olds. Like in New Jersey, the age is 16. In New York, it's 18.
No, same here. It's 16, it's 16. With parental consent. I like one or two of my guys will do it on somebody they know.
Yeah.
I've personally done it twice on very good friends and their 16, 17-year-old kids.
Yeah.
My wife works in a shop where it's like, no, you got to do the tattoo. You have no, do it. And she's like, okay, cool. But she was also from Tennessee, where I think back then it was 15 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
And the only reason they stopped was because they would get both parents or the whatever parent was with them. They'd have them sign paperwork, whatever, and they would do the tattoo. And she had a 15-year-old or 16-year-old. She did it on. The mother came back flipping the fuck out.
Oh, my God.
And she was just like, you tattooed my daughter. It's like, hey, we have a piece of paper. It was signed by her father. Her father doesn't have fucking custody of her. I do. And that was where she said, okay, we're done. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like, yeah, where do you draw that line on that, like, mentality of, like, we just do anything? And I don't know. Like, there are limitations that I have, too. And, like, age is definitely... Like, I have kids that are that age, and I feel like they're babies. Like, I'm not going to tattoo my 15, almost 16-year-old kid. I think it's
best to try to educate, and that's the thing. Like, we had a kid in here. He was... 16 or 17, he came in with his brother's ID. And his father came in, bent, because I did the tattoo. And he's like, who owns this shop? I'm like, I do. And he's like, are you Joe? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he's like, you tattooed my fucking 16-year-old, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, all right, hold on 1 second. This one, we still had paper forms. Going through paperwork, find the fucking form. It's like, this your kid? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, is this ID? He goes, no, that's his brother's. I'm like, cool. I'm going to call the fucking sheriff. I'm going to tell him that your kid came in here with false identification and basically tricked us into tattooing him. I was like, so do you want to take this down that road, or you want to just have a stern talking to with your kid?
Yeah, exactly.
He stormed out of here pissed off. Never seen him again.
Yeah, because it's not your job to be the FBI and figure out, are you this person, or you who you say you are.
But when that kid came in, I said, do me a favor, go fuck yourself, never step back in this shop again.
Seriously.
I mean, he may have come back. I don't remember him so long ago.
Yeah, it's such a crazy, wow, what a weird time. Like, yeah,
it's if you think about it, it's not. I mean, it's like, we get kids in here all the time, and it's just, what are you going to do? It's like you just try to explain to them, man, your parents know better in this case.
I was 17 when I got my first tattoo, and I was a very rotten teenage child, and I talked my dad into taking me, and I leveraged the fact it was 1997 or 8, and I was 17. I was going to be 18 in a couple months, and he kept pushing off, and in the 90s, like, the AIDS epidemic was like a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I grew up in New York. I would always hang out in the city, and my parents knew that. And it was so bad. I might even get canceled for saying this out loud. But like back then, this is this old version of me. I was like, if you don't take me to your guy, Mike Profetto, if you don't take me to Mike, I'm going to go to St. Mark's and they're going to use an AIDS needle, and that's going to be your fault. That's literally how I got my first tattoo. And I think about that now. Like, my kids would never say some shit like that to me.
But again, your kids are being brought up in a completely different fucking way. I mean, I didn't get my first tattoo till I was 21.
Yeah.
And dude, I didn't cuss in front of my mom until I was in my fucking mid-20s, like late 20s. But I grew up in a old school Italian neighborhood. Old school Italian household.
Yeah.
And you just didn't do that.
You just didn't do that.
I've been tattooing for 5-6 years, had half sleeves, had my legs all shitted up, and I still wore fucking long sleeves, or sleeves long enough and pants long enough that my dad didn't see my tattoos, because he's old school. Like, he came over here in the mid 60s. And he just didn't understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to shove it down his throat. I don't care.
Culturally,
it was just a respect thing, And it's funny. I think what you talked about before about with when I was bitching and complaining about Carlos and stuff like that, we were talking about respect. And I think back then a lot of motherfuckers demanded it, and they didn't realize that you kind of got to give it to get it. And I think that's something that was lost on us back in the day. For me personally, it wasn't. I grew up in that kind of a household that, if you treated somebody like shit, you was treated like shit back. And it wasn't because you were older. Like, your parents could say, I'm your fucking father. You fucking listen to me. You did, because it's your fucking dad. But if it's somebody on the fucking street, or if it's somebody who owned a tattoo shop that you worked at, no, man, this is a give and take. I will give you the respect that you're due. But if you treat me like dog shit, know full well, I'm going to tell you to go fuck yourself. And I feel I've got complete rights to that. The same thing with the apprenticeships. I think that's something that a lot of younger generation of tattooers nowadays, when they shit on apprenticeships, they're so used to hearing these fucking horror stories. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be, get to know the person that you're trying to get to apprentice you. And if he's that guy, don't take the fucking apprenticeship.
That's what I was saying about, like, people coming in, they'll go to a shop and they'll ask anybody who will say yes to them, not knowing, like, why do you want me? Like, do you want me to tattoo? Like, I've come from the world of go to the people that you want to learn from and get tattooed by them.
Yeah.
That, I don't know how that got lost, but it did, very much so.
I think it got lost because people got lazy. People looked at it as, well, why do I got to look for somebody? Why can't I just go somewhere? Like when someone cold calls the shop and they're looking for an apprenticeship, or it's like, dude, you don't do that. Like, if you don't know the person, why would you even want to go to that?
Why would you? I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't even know anything about them or what they do or what. Like, why? You just want anybody to say yes to you. So,
but I think that's part of the problem with the world we live in today, where a lot of these cats, that's all they're interested in. They're interested in you saying yes right fucking now, and I don't want to hear anything else from that. And then when they get in there, they expect it to be all wine and roses, not realizing it's like, yeah, dude, no, Nobody gives a fuck about you, dude. Like, you're just some fucking kid who came in that I looked at as low-hanging fruit, and I'm taking advantage of it now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, I made it a rule, like, to not even, like, I will not even consider, ever, not that I want an apprentice anytime soon, but I would never even consider somebody unless they got to know me and got tattooed and showed real art interests. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be in that basket for it to even be, like, on the horizon. You know, I don't want to take any apprentices at the moment, but, like, you know, I just don't have that in me, and there's enough tattooers in my mind, you know.
And that's exactly how I look.
There's enough tattooers, but...
I've never had an apprentice. I don't want an apprentice. I feel like there's enough talent out there that if I was looking for somebody, I can find them. If I could find a younger tattooer that could use a little bit of tooling,
like a guidance, like mentoring.
I would rather that.
Like cultivate somebody.
Yeah, because realistically, I think it's individuals that bring something to the part. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you can train somebody to do things the way you want, but it's that individual. Like, I don't want to create a new individual. I want that person to still have his own voice, his own mark in his little universe. You know what I mean? Because that's what's going to make the shop more interesting. That's what's going to make the clientele coming through to get tattooed him more interesting.
Yeah.
When you cater everything about that person to just that minute, then yeah, you're going to have. I don't want someone who's only here because I created them. You know what I mean? I want them to have their own voice, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, I see that, like, younger tattooers don't even really see the full potential of the opportunity that they have. Like, I've said this to, like, younger tattoo artists. It's like, you know, I had my first kid very young. I was barely 24. I'd been tattooing 3 years. So, like, my life was, like, focused around being a mom and a tattooer, because that was the only job I've ever had really, like, full-time after that point. But to somebody who's, like, younger, that doesn't have, you know, a family at that stage in life, you have opportunities. You can go travel. You can do guest spots. You can do all these cool things, and, like, continuing education. Lots of tattooers are doing really great, like, you know, educational things, or will accept guest artists, and a lot of people don't take advantage of that. And I'm like, I wish I was in your spot at that age. I would have been all over the place.
Well, I think part of the problem is because everything is being dished out to them in a way that, you know, you have, like, the Explorer, you have Evergreen, you have all these different 3-day weekend things happening. And I'm not going to say that they're not worth it. I'm sure that anybody who, you know, certain people that go to those things get a ridiculous amount of knowledge out of it. I think you lose out when you don't take the time to get to find the right person. You just signed up for these 12 artists. Now, you may like one or two of them, and you might actually glean something from one of the two of those people, but you get more if you just go get tattooed. It'll probably cost you the same fucking money.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you ask the questions that you want to ask. Or, you know, you got a lot of guys, like, they're doing these machine building seminars. You want to learn how to build a machine, go to their fucking shops. Take these weekend, you know, machine building seminars. A lot of people, and again, I don't necessarily agree with it, because I know a lot of them are just money grabs, but they'll do, like, these mentorships. You know what I mean? Again, I don't necessarily think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the way to do it.
Look into it, I guess. I don't know.
Get tattooed. Then you get a tattoo out of the deal. You get you get the conversation. You get to understand the culture of that shop, which you
might actually make a fucking friend. You know what I mean? Like
a real life friend, not an internet friend. Yeah, it's such a weird world that, like, people don't take advantage of all the things that I thought that tattooing was when I started. Like, it's still fresh in my mind, and I have a hard time realizing, like, the world is dramatically different from that in a lot of ways, but, like, they have so much resource. Obviously, the internet is a huge source of things. Like, you can YouTube literally anything in this day and age, but there's something to be said about that's why when you were saying that, like, you know, getting people to come here, I'm just like, what? Like, that's wild concept of, like, I was, like, thrilled to be able to come out here today.
But again, it takes a certain type of person to understand what it is that they're stepping into.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when John and Matt and Gabe with the Honest Tattooer down in New York, I'm taking Christian there next weekend, actually. And I had said to him, I go, dude, you need, just do it. Go do it. You know what I mean? They have a bigger audience, a much bigger audience than I do. And, you know, and it's fun. You know, it's a night in New York. You'll have a good time. And he's like, I don't want to do it by myself. And I'm like, well, dude, just go. And he's like, well, I'll do it if you do it. And I'm like, dude, if I go down there, it's going to be a fucking dog and pony show. I'm going to have a couple of whiskeys, and I'm going to get fucking loud, because that's what I do on other people's shits. But I know I'm going to have a good time, so it'll be worth going. You know what I mean? But it is one of those situations you do have to realize. It's like, yeah, dude, I don't have some of those opportunities that you get in New York. Like when I left, before I met my girlfriend, soon, who would eventually become my wife, Alethea, my next step was to move into Manhattan. For no other reason than I lived on Long Island for my entire life, and now the next step is going to be, okay, now you got to grow you got to go to a bigger pool, and it's got to be Manhattan, and maybe travel back and forth to Long Island or get a job in the city, whatever, work for somebody in the city. It turns out I met my wife, and then we started traveling the world, and it was like, okay, fuck New York.
Yeah.
This is a much bigger pond.
Oh, yeah.
Now this is an ocean in comparison. So it was literally like that was my next learning experience. Was no longer, it's not just about Long Island. Now it's like, I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to fucking Paris. I'm going to fucking Italy. I'm going to fucking...
The opportunities of tattooing. So cool.
And that's the thing. Like somebody had once told me that, this guy Tom Butler, who I worked with at Lotus, he owned Lotus in the beginning, him and Civ. And I remember Tom saying, he goes, dude, this is the only job that's going to allow you to go anywhere in the fucking world. And as long as you have your gear with you and another tattooer to connect with, you'll be able to do this anywhere in the world. And I've literally been doing that for 32 fucking years.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you seize that opportunity in realizing, like, this is an awesome job we have, and why not make those, take advantage and do those things? It's like, what else can you do in life that brings you this kind of, like, travel ability, getting to meet with other artists. And there's a lot of cool tattoo people. There's a lot of cool artists, like in my shop in Jersey, it's just me. And now I just have one other person that I just took on. But when I go to Staten Island and work, at Bullseye, I love going there. There's 10 of us, and it's like 10 completely different styles. And they're all like real cool people in the sense that, like, nobody's too pretentious. Anyone will talk to you about whatever they're doing. They'll share what needle they're using. They'll be like, oh, try this machine, try that. Like, sharing the things that to me is what, like,
that's what I've often said, that's what you lack from working in a private studio.
Yeah.
If you don't have a bunch of people to bounce ideas off of, then you're lacking. And that was the thing. Like when I left New York to go work in New Hampshire to work with Corey Kruger. I went up there because Corey was a much better artist than I was. He was a different tattooer than I was. And he was hungry to do a lot of the things that I was kind of interested in. Mixing pigments, learning to build machines, doing all kinds of the ins and outs of stuff. But I could also go there and work on a fucking sleeve and show it to Corey. And Corey would be like, what would be cool is if you change this, and this. And then you sit back and go, okay, I got to redraw the entire fucking thing. And you do. And you end up with a better drawing and a better tattoo out of it, because you took the experiences and the opinion of somebody who's maybe different, not even so much better, but different than what you would have done, and it pushed you in a direction that you wouldn't have taken. Same thing with machines. It wasn't me that decided to pick up rotaries. It was Lal Hardy going, who's got, at that time he had 30 years experience. It's Lal Hardy going, you really should give these rotaries a try. And my response was, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And his response was, you need to try these rotaries. And never turn back.
Lo and behold.
Exactly. He was right.
That's what I think it was Eddie on your show recently was saying that if somebody offered advice, even if he didn't like take it, he'd listen to the advice and appreciate that, like, somebody's trying to, like, share knowledge and not in an insulting jerk way. Like, that's how you get better.
Yeah.
Like, I have a few friends at the shop in Staten Island. Like, I can say to them, like, do me a favor, like, critique this for me. I'm really, like, stuck in my head, or I can't see this a different way. And, like, not like this, like, gentle, like, and I'm like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, just say the thing, say the thing. It's it will make me better, and I trust that you're coming from a good place, because I know you, and I know you're not.
It's not going to be an attack.
It's not an attack, or like let me degrade you in some, like, weird way. It's a really great thing to be able to do that with other artists, and to know that somebody's going to, and even if it's not like, I don't ask, I welcome somebody saying, like, oh, that, you can do this, and that will look a little bit better.
That is a big deal when you start. When you've been around people, and this is something I think we suffer from here, in the sense that, like, we've been around each other for so long that we take each other for granted. And those opportunities, that we never take advantage of those opportunities to sit down with somebody and go, hey man, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And you're just caught up in the moment of doing the day's work, and you're not thinking beyond finishing the tattoo right then and there. So, while I agree with you wholeheartedly, you do kind of get in your own way.
You fall in
sometimes.
a little rut of it.
You get in your own way,
yeah.
where you just sit back and go, "Oh no, I got this. I'm just gonna."
Well, also, yeah, you were saying that you have like rooms here, right? There, it's like one big open space, and that changes a lot the dynamic, because you feel almost like, do I walk into the room? And where it's like when it's big one open space, like on days that I'm like leaving or like I have a little break, I'll watch every single person still tattoo. Like even though I know how to tattoo, and I'm not like trying to like get this big lesson, but I'm still genuinely curious, just as I was like kind of in the beginning of like, how are you doing that? How are you approaching that? Or, oh, that's interesting that you chose to do that. Like, watching, I love watching tattooers still. Like, I think it's a really cool thing. Like, I've done that since like the very beginning and never really stopped that part. So I always tell tattooers, watch other people. And if they're not a jerk, they'll be like, yeah, cool. I mean, some people are weird about it, but whatever. But like a lot of people will just like sit there and like share what they're doing and talk about, oh yeah, I'm using this whatever ink. Like I've gotten so many new things in my arsenal from doing that alone.
Definitely. I mean, just this past weekend, we went to Hell City, and I asked. I mean, I've only ever used Easy Glow since 2009. From Electric Ink, and I'm fine with that. I'm not willing to change. I'm good with that. But when it comes to certain things like blacks or black and gray or whatever, there's always somebody who's got something new coming down the pipe. So I did try something today, or the last couple of tattoos I've done black and gray, using a different brand. So I'm excited to see what that looks like when it comes back. And it's one of those things. If I hadn't taken the time to go to Hell City, if I hadn't taken the time to go up to that particular artist and ask him what his opinions were, I probably wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? And to his credit, he actually gave me his pigment. I mean, he's sponsored by them, so I don't think it's a big deal for him.
No loss.
Exactly. So he was pretty cool about it. But again, it's one of those things. Even 32 years in, I'm still asking advice from people.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I love that you don't lose that. I feel like, and I said this to a lot of people in the past, that like when you feel like you've learned it all, just throw in the towel.
Then you're done.
Just quit.
The moment you listen to what every client has to tell you about how great you are, and the moment you think that you're in charge of everything that you do, that you're never going to be able to do it better than what you're doing now, then you're fucked. You might as well walk away.
Might as well walk away. I know. Exactly. And when I first really noticed that was when I worked at this Enigma. I worked with this one artist that when I first started working there, I thought he was like God, like amazing. And after 9 years, I'm like, did he just start sucking? He didn't. I just got better, and he stayed.
You had a grander scheme of things.
Like he stayed exactly where he was for 9 years, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like you shouldn't look exactly the same in 9 years."
Well, it's always easy to get stuck. It's always easy to get caught in a rut or get stuck in a time zone. You know what I mean? Where it's funny when I went back to Lotus a few months ago. I remember going in there and being like, God, this place is so fucking small. And coming into this, it was the biggest place in the world.
Oh, wow.
I absolutely fucking love going to work here.
Yeah.
And now I'm here and I'm just like, God, fuck this place. You know what I mean?
It's like teeny tiny.
Yeah, and it's not, there was that reminiscent thing that you have when you go back to something that brought you up. But there was also that, I'm beyond this now. Fuck this. You know?
Yeah, I'll never. Every place I've ever worked is long gone. But the newer things have just been like redoing the inside of the shop and looking the same. So I don't get that with like visiting a shop. I get it with like clients. I get certain people that I'm like, oh, this is back. This is like a different world of tattooing.
Yeah.
I remember I had my shop when I had my shop in New York. I had a client of mine who was like a biker dude, and I've known him for a really long time, probably since like year one of tattooing. So he knows me on a personal level. He knows my dad was a biker. He knows my dad was in a Bronx Tale in the biker scene. My dad was in all these cool things. This guy knows my life in that sense, right? And he is like a kind of like a joking guy and likes to like find little like humor and stuff. So he was like, Maggie, I got some friends that are coming by to see you. I said, yeah, all right, cool. He's like, yeah, they'll be here. They're going to be pulling up soon. He didn't tell me that they're biker dudes. So I'm there, like in my, like, probably like a skirt and like, like my red lipstick and like all like, oh, hi, how are you doing today? And they come in and they try to pull this like, we're going to try to be intimidating bikers bullshit. And I'm like, that's adorable.
Yeah,
and I like
exactly.
went to town with them, and Vinny's sitting in the back. He's like laughing. I was like, you're an asshole. And he was like, well, I knew you'd be able to handle it. I was like, yeah, but why?
But why would you put me through that?
Why? He was like, because I know that they don't know that you can handle it. And he's like, I know they were going to come and pull that tough guy bullshit. Because I was like giving it to them because they thought they were going to be intimidating. I'm like, that's really cute. I was raised around guys that are like 1,000 times scarier. Yeah. Like, but that's adorable that you want to get like that. But after a while, I became mad cool with them, and I loved tattooing because it was like old school New York dudes that just like have this essence that like, and I still see them to this day. Like, I'll still tattoo them randomly here and there, and it's just like, so, you know, I don't have the shop for that like nostalgia, but I have the people for it.
That's the same. It's the same thing when you go back in time to a certain type of clientele.
Yeah.
You know where it puts you in your timeline of your career.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and that was like one that always stood out to me. And the guy like kind of realized, and he looks at Vinny, and Vinny's like cracking up laughing on the couch back there. He was like, "Dude, you just did it to yourself." And he was like, "Oh, you know." I was like, yeah, you know, well, first of all, it's a lesson in respect, guys. You don't come into a shop and start acting like an asshole.
Especially in a tattoo shop. I mean, you could do that with most shops nowadays, but you probably would never step foot in those shops, so why would you bother? You know what I mean?
I mean, but also, like, there's shop hours that, like, are, you know, we're done by, like, 6, 7 o'clock, like, normal business hours, where, like, these guys were like, do you work at midnight? You open at 1? I'm like, not anymore.
It's
that's
like,
not
dude,
something
I was gonna say, it's like I grew out of that thing, Christ,
like,
you know.
No thanks. You know, like Enigma days, I was at the shop till 12 o'clock, no matter what.
Yeah.
Rain or shine. We had one customer, we had no customers. 12 p.m.
Yeah.
You leave, you know, and that sucked. But like those days that's not tattooing anymore, you know.
No, I think those shops still exist. I mean, I know in New York, I remember going to Shamrock a few years ago. Now it's a different Shamrock, obviously, but I remember going there and seeing like Chris Garver working his shift. And, you know, he's been like, it's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. He's like, oh, man, I think I might be able to cut out of here early. And the fucking floor guy going, you know, man, shop don't close till 3 a.m.
Oh, my God, really?
And
I'm
that. Like, dude, you're Chris Garver. Like,
yeah.
Fuck this. You could just go. And it's just like, you realize he ain't going nowhere.
No,
he's here till 3.
3? Oh, wow. Yeah. That's so crazy to hear
It's nuts, dude. It's like, but again, I mean, and that was only, well, it was probably 12 years ago. But still, it was one of those things to see it. So those shops still exist. I mean, and that's the beauty of this business. As much as dramatically as things are changing, we are dinosaurs that were not wiped out by a meteor.
Yeah.
We are still plodding along on the earth.
Yeah.
And the fact is, for some of us, it's never going to change, and that's not a bad thing.
I think so. I think you're right.
And I think when some of the young cats get to experience it, and just to be a fly on the wall sometimes, it's the kind of thing that either it makes them appreciate that much more what they have, or it makes them be like, damn, I want to fucking break off a piece of that. And that's a big fucking deal.
I hope it makes that impact on people. I hope it's not lost in generations forever, you know?
Well, on that note, is there anything in particular you definitely want to touch on, or you feel good about leaving it at that? Or?
I feel good about leaving it at that. I'm so thankful to have been here and had this conversation.
I'm really happy you came up early.
Yeah, no, this is awesome.
I'm really excited you made the trip from.
I was so excited to come today, so thank you for that.
Sweet.
It's good talking to you.
All right. Well, hey everybody. Thank you very much for coming up. I'm going to leave all of Maggie's stuff in the description. Instagram, all that stuff. I'll put her aliases in as well. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you when I see you.
Thanks. Bye.